Y'all might hear an echo real quick because the YouTube is going to come up on my screen.
Okay.
There it is. All right, we're live on YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and get us going on the website here. Another echo. Oh, there we go. I paused it in time.
I'm going to sign back in real quick only because it doesn't look like my screen is working properly here for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, Tori.
Hi, sorry, I was on mute. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Beautiful day today.
Yes, gorgeous.
Can you see me?
No.
What
Oh,
about
it
now?
looks like it's coming up.
Does it work now?
Oh, you are red for me.
I'm red. That means I need to restart. Let me rejoin. I'll be right back.
Sure, go ahead.
That's weird that they're both having that issue.
Yeah, one of the council members, well, his camera just wouldn't turn on during the last council meeting, and
Oh, really?
it
Okay.
seems to be like a hardware issue on his side rather than Zoom, but we'll see.
I'm going to also restart mine because my computer's working now.
Oh yeah, okay, go ahead. All right, so we should be up on the website. I'm just checking it now.
We can see you, Tori.
Okay, it's working now. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, and again, you might hear an echo.
No, I didn't mean to do that. I think after a year, I'd have this all figured out, but no.
It's always something. Okay.
All right, I will be back in 45 seconds.
Okay.
All right, I think we are all set on the website and all set on YouTube, so we're ready to go.
I don't know why it says that I'm looking at Emily. I'm looking at your screen. Instead of
Because I'm sharing my screen.
Oh, okay, there. Much
Can you-
better.
Do you
That's
see
back
it?
to that's back to normal. Good.
Was
It was
it-
just because
What was it doing?
it was not showing up with all the people at the same time like a typical Zoom, and it
Oh.
wasn't showing any of the people at the same time.
Okay.
So, but now I think we're back to usual.
Okay.
Do you still have my camera off?
Yes, we cannot.
Okay. That's fine. I just want to make sure, since I'm so technologically literate here.
Does my audio sound okay?
Yes,
Yep, we can hear you.
All right.
And Pamela, I'm going to try and remember during the meeting. But in case I forget, Laura was planning to jump on at about 6.
okay,
So she'll show up in the waiting room. So if we can both try and keep an eye on the waiting room,
will do.
that way we don't leave her hanging there for too long if I get distracted. He's sitting there knocking on the door.
Emily, do we have anybody for public participation?
We do not. We have nobody signed up.
Pamela, I just have 3 small edits on the minutes.
Oh, I thought we'd have a million.
Well,
That's
I
good.
only have 3. Other people may have more, but
Okay, I'm prepared.
okay.
Aaron and Kate both confirmed they'd be here, right, Emily?
Yes, Aaron and Kate both confirmed, and then we know Chelsea also
late.
confirmed, but said she'd be a couple minutes late. She would be driving home right at 5:30, so she
Okay.
will jump on in about 10 minutes or so.
Okay,
But yeah, I'll give it another couple minutes, and then maybe we can each mute and call somebody if we don't have.
Sure.
I'm gonna step away for 30 seconds. I will be right back.
okay.
I was planning to sit outside on my patio while the meeting was going on, only
Yeah.
to get about 8 drops of rain at just the wrong time.
Oh,
Now I think it stopped.
it looks beautiful out.
Okay. Sorry, I have a house rabbit who's decided it's spring, so she's gonna like make a whole nest in her house, which we're trying to prevent. So to go give her more hay to distract her.
Only you, Emily.
Yeah, right. Like only in my house. Okay, why don't we? I will mute myself and give Erin a call. Pamela, do you want to mute yourself and give Kate a call?
Yep.
And we'll see if we can get some folks. All right, I'll go call Erin. Oh, Pamela, I just got a message from Kate that she tried to log on by phone, but her passcode is invalid.
Okay, so I don't need to call her then?
Well, no, I think if you don't mind calling her and trying to troubleshoot that she does have the right passcode.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I'm on, but we don't have a quorum yet.
Rob, you might get off real easy this evening if we can't get a quorum.
Yeah. What do we have? One,
You
two
won't
of
have
us.
to- you won't have to run the meeting after all.
Yeah. Only two of us on. What do we need? Four for a quorum?
Yeah. Yeah, and we had 5 confirmed, so.
Okay,
Well,
Emily,
was
did-
definitely going to come late, just
She
or
might.
not at all.
Go ahead, Pamela.
so I tried to walk Kate through it. She's going to try again. She has all the right numbers.
Oh, here we
Um,
go. I see her
oh,
in the
enter.
waiting room. Yeah,
Is that Kate?
I believe so. 307.
Yes, it is. Okay, I just called it.
Oh, there we go.
I'm on.
Hi,
Yay.
Kate.
Hi, guys. Sorry.
Hey,
That's
Kate.
okay. We're still waiting on one more commissioner to join, so we have a quorum.
Did you get a
Did
hold of?
Fred make it?
He did not. So Aaron said he could make it, so I just called, but I left him a message. He was on, it seemed like he was on the other line. And then Chelsea said she could log on, but she would be a few minutes late because she had a meeting right up until 5:30. So
Maybe I should run over to Fred's house to see if he's home.
well, he wasn't feeling well from his email.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think we'll let him rest.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
He's,
Thank
I
you
know
for
he's got
offering that.
sciatica. Yeah.
Well, we'll sit tight for 5 more minutes, and I think if maybe if we don't have enough folks by 5:50, we might have to call it here. Oh gosh.
What?
Hold on just a minute. Okay, Aaron will not be able to make the meeting. So we'll sit tight for a few and see if Chelsea can join.
Emily, when you talk about a quorum, that's a quorum to conduct business. Does that preclude us from being able to do all the things like, or we can do certain things, but we can't do things like approve past minutes and we can't make formal votes, but we could go through the agenda otherwise, just not have votes. For instance, talk about the pros and cons of alcohol in the park.
That's a really sticky question, actually, since none of these are technically all business items, even if you're not making formal recommendations on them. So I would not I wouldn't really be able to take that information over to council as like PTRC feedback because it's not really a quorum of PTRC. Does that make sense? It would be Rob and Tori's feedback, but not really the commission's as a whole.
Right.
That makes sense.
Well, and I don't think it precludes us from having the discussion. I just don't know how valuable the recommendation is when it only comes from a portion of the commission.
Yeah, and that's why, typically, this is kind of funky because we're in the virtual format. I mean, typically, if we couldn't get a quorum at that point, we would just hold off and move these things forward to the June meeting instead, so that we could really have a robust discussion with more commission members.
Would it help for me to call Chelsea or no?
I don't think it would hurt. Do you mind?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you. And I'm gonna see if I can get in touch with Laura real quick. So I'm gonna mute too.
Emily, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, she is coming on right now.
Oh, perfect.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, you're our savior tonight.
Well, I appreciate you waiting. I'm so sorry. I have too many balls in the air tonight, so I appreciate your understanding.
No, you are just fine. We had other members with stuff that came up unexpectedly, so.
Okay. Well, I'm
It's
happy
great
to
that you could join, even late. That's perfect.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Sorry, everybody.
Okay.
All right.
Pamela, are you ready to get started?
I am.
Okay. So since Chair Dahl and Vice Chair Wolf are both absent, Commissioner Eber, as the longest tenured PTRC member with us, is going to serve as acting chair for this meeting unless there are any objections.
Great.
So hearing no objections, Mr. Eber, you can call the meeting to order.
Sure. Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, everybody. Wanted to go ahead and call our May meeting of PTRC to order. I've got 5:52 on my clock. Let's go ahead and proceed to a roll call for the members.
Kate Murphy,
Here, present.
Fred Wolf, we'll mark as absent. Rob Eber,
Here,
Aaron Gradinsky, absent. Stephanie Dahl, is absent. Tori Leviton,
Here,
and Chelsea Scott.
Here.
okay, I understand that we do not have any audience participation tonight.
That's
So we
correct.
will
have no
jump
one-
over that and head to our consent agenda, the minutes from April 8th, 2021. I have a couple small edits, but I want to have everybody else go ahead if you have any on your own.
not here.
Not here either.
Okay, while you're looking a little bit, if you have any others, on page 12, in the last paragraph on the 5th line, I believe there halfway across is the word entirely, and I think it should be entirety. So just a spelling,
Okay,
fast fingers, just missed one letter. And now my dogs decided they want to talk. Page 15 and the third paragraph on the second line. Says vacation that it, and I think it just a couple of words either were left out or I wasn't clear when I said it, but it was that it seek consideration that is for multiples of fair market value.
okay,
And then at the second to the last line of the same paragraph, it says value of what is being given up as, I would insert the word only. So it reads only the applicant benefits by combining the two lots.
okay.
Let's see. Page 8, on the last paragraph, on the third to the last line, after the word connectivity in the middle of the line, I think we should just have a comma there. And that's everything that I have.
Okay,
Anybody else have any other changes? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes with these 3 changes or 4 changes.
Oh, go ahead.
I move to approve the minutes with these 3 amendments from our April
I
meeting.
second it. I
Motion
second
has
it.
been made and seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes from April 8th with the amendments discussed above, please say aye.
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 All right.
Any opposed? No. Minutes are adopted as amended. Next on our agenda is unfinished business, trail etiquette rules, and speeding. Emily, can you remind us? And you had provided us a memorandum, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. So this is really a follow-up, wrapping up loose ends that started during the e-bike discussion. So at their March 16th meeting, council reviewed PTRC's recommendation to keep the municipal code the same regarding e-bikes and keep it so that motorized vehicles are not permitted on any of the trails. So council agreed with that recommendation that nothing would change. But they did acknowledge that speeding and trail etiquette were issues that are going to, that are still ongoing. So they asked PTRC to look at specific issues that are related to this. So speeding on trails, all types of bicycles, trail etiquette like announcing when passing, or people wearing headphones so it's hard to alert them when you're passing. And then there was another thought about identifying an e-bike route through the city for commuters as a clear alternative to using other trails. So they asked PTRC to do some more legwork about these issues and look at possible actions that the city could take. As it relates to the Highline Canal specifically, the signs that will be going in for the Highline Canal this summer do address some of these things. We just approved our final proofs for those signs. I sent them to you last Friday over email, and those are with the fabricator now. So hoping in the next few months, we'll start to see those signs go in along the Highline. So
Those
do-
are those signs Exhibit B that you also provided in our packet?
No, I didn't put I sent them by email instead of putting them in the packet because they're extensive shop drawings.
Right, they were the long poles and
Yes.
the additions that would go on those.
Yeah, so they're
Okay.
much more detailed. They have maps of the Highline Canal and kind of the surrounding area to orient trail users. So they're much larger and more detailed. Our signs on bridle trails we're anticipating will be a lot simpler. But those larger Highline signs will have the yield triangle on them showing who yields to who. They'll have the speed limit on them. And they also have a reminder to announce when you're passing someone. So they will address those concerns on those signs. The Highline Canal Conservancy is also still working on their Share the Canal campaign. So they will be doing an educational campaign this summer about speeding, about safe passing, and really how to be courteous when you're on the trail. So that's going to include Conservancy staff, and it looks like probably also volunteers, and it'll be signage, and then also people being out on the trail and providing outreach. So those are two things that are already happening specifically on the Highline that we know that hopefully will help educate trail users. In terms of possible actions that the city can take, I have 4 different options in your memo. So the first that we're suggesting are signage for bridle trails at popular access points. So this is Exhibit B. So what we were thinking about on the staff side is putting small medallion signs on our existing bollards. When I say medallion signs, I mean like the small ones, like the signs that we have right now. And they would be targeted to that location. So if it's a spot where we know we have more issues with off-leash dogs, that would be the dog sign. If it's access points from the Highline, maybe that's where we put, the speed limit again and no e-bike signs. And try to get that information out there, but on the bridle trails in a less intrusive way so that they blend in. They're on the signposts that we already have, but we are communicating this information to everybody who's using the trail. Another option 2, is additional signs on the Highline Canal, specifically at the entry points, and especially right when you come up from the new Hamden underpass, or when you're coming through the underpass at Bellevue, really reiterating, e-bikes aren't allowed on this section of trail, what the speed limit is, and that you're in Cherry Hills Village now, since sometimes people don't realize when they're crossing over. So those are in the works, sort of no matter what PTRC decides, we do plan to do that. We are really looking for feedback from you all about if there are specific things you want on those signs, or what they should look like, if you have ideas about that. Option 3 is a public awareness campaign, sort of internal to the city, separate from what the Highline Canal Conservancy is doing. So this could be staff or PTRC writing articles for the crier, making little blurbs for social media, and just trying to get the word out about trail etiquette within the city to our residents. And the last one is speed data. So we placed the city's speed sensors on the Highline Canal about a week ago to try and collect data on user speed. Remains to be seen how well they pick up bicycles. So this is sort of a test, but we're hoping to leave them out for a couple weeks in order to collect multiple weekends that have good weather, since that's our highest use period. So I will, that one I don't have that much information on. I'll give BTRC an update as we collect more data, but I wanted to let you all know that that's something that we're working on and getting more information about. I also have an update from the chief that the police department is outfitting an e-bike for police department use on the trails. So that's all the information I have about that at this point, but that's also, just keep that in the back of your mind as something that they're working on as well. So really what I'm looking for PTRC, you don't have to provide a specific recommendation on this. Really, we're just looking for direction on those different options. If you think one is the most important and that's the one that staff should focus on, you know, these signs first or something like that, that would be really helpful. So I'm really just looking for feedback from you all.
I just had a question. When are those underpasses scheduled to be completed, Hampden and Bellevue?
Well, Bellevue's done.
Okay.
Bellevue has been, we put a new floor in it last year, but
Right.
it's all set. Hampden underpass will open. We are going to have a celebration with Denver that starts in Magna Carta Park on the Denver side on June 3rd at 4 o'clock. So there will be a ride through with kids so that they can be the first ones to ride their bikes through the Colorado underpass first and then the Hampden underpass.
I see they've kind of accelerated on those because I'm in that intersection so many times every week. And they kind of didn't do anything and then it warmed up and now they're just really getting through there. And I didn't know what it looked like on our side of Hampden.
Yeah, so we, the wet weather has been a little bit tough because you need a dry spell to be able to pour concrete. But they poured the bridge decking today, so that's our last concrete pour on our side. So really it's just, the only things left to do are really landscaping and irrigation on our side, so.
Okay, so when it comes to signage, then we're kind of on our, we make our own schedule. It's not contingent on any of these openings. Although some of it's contingent on the Highline Conservancy's schedule.
Yes, so the Conservancy holds the contract for all of the wayfinding signs for the whole canal. So they have hired a fabricator and they're doing the installation as well. So we don't really have control over when those will be installed. That'll happen this summer. But for the signs that we would be putting in closer to the underpass, we would be the ones ordering and likely installing those signs. So those we do have more control over the timeline.
I do like the suggestions. I think the welcome signs would be great. I'd like us to at least appear to be welcoming. And the yield triangle signs, I don't know if they're gonna work, but at least it takes some liability off of us for, at least we're trying to make sure that the yield signs would be working. Speed limit signs, absolutely, even just for simple liability reasons. None of us like those speeders on the trail. And I guess indefinitely, the no e-bike signs are gonna have to be considered as well. And I don't know if you want to do multiple signs, you want to do one big one with all that information or somewhere in between. And that's my thoughts.
Emily, can I ask a question? Are the
Absolutely.
medallions the little signs that are on those brown posts that exist currently, like the brown wooden posts and the little medallion goes on it?
Yes.
Okay, so my thought on the no e-bikes, the yield and the dogs must be leashed. I think that from a color standpoint and a size standpoint, they're probably easier to miss. And so I don't know if you can see this, and if you can, I can email this to you. But this is like an example of a sign in like on a trail that says, you know, do not step on plants, stay on the path.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to point out the color scheme and the size and the location. I think to make a statement, especially with the e-bike, since this is a new issue, and the yielding too, if it was at all possible to change the color so it's not brown and kind of faded into what's in existence, it might stand out more. So that's just kind of my thought on how to make it maybe a little bit more effective. Just might be to make it stand out from what's already in existence.
No, that's great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can email you. I mean, these are examples of signs. You don't have to have it, but if you need it, I'm happy to. But
Sure.
Emily, I thought I'd just mention that I think that, all of the ideas that are listed on the memo or in the memo are great. I guess I just have a couple questions, if I may. When we say dogs must be leashed at all times, I assume that's because we think that dogs are the ones that are the problems, and it shouldn't say pets and be non-discriminating, I don't know what other pets people have, but at one point, believe it or not, there were some exotic animal pets in the village. But, do you just want to replace dogs with pets? But then you get into the question of what about horses? Because obviously horses aren't supposed to be leashed, nor do they have to be picked up after. But limiting it only to dogs just seemed a little bit limiting to me. The other question I had is I thought I saw in the minutes from council that there was some discussion that we may potentially want to lower the speed limit on our trails. And I'd hate to print up signs with speed limits or take up that have to be redone. So just a timing factor more than anything there. Speed data, I'm not sure, are those just the cords that you roll across that measure time between A and B? Obviously, they don't work for horses.
No, I'm not sure if these are the cord kinds or the sensor kinds. Jeff might be able to weigh in on that.
Well, and I guess my only point is, I think that most everybody believes that our speeding issue is at the result of bicycles. I don't think that we have complaints of horseback riding, but I
No.
do think we need to be aware that everybody is held to the same standard. So horse riders who need to make sure that they stay at that speed limit as well. And if we're going to try and measure, we need to make sure that, somehow horse riders know that as well. I'm happy to be one of the people writing articles for the Crier and or Villager. I think it's a great idea. Let's see. I guess the only question that I have is, we all spoke a lot about education being our first shot and hopeful that people will get it and understand it and follow it. I think we have to be realistic about what the next step could look like. We had the police department come out and talk to us about the difficulties of writing a speeding ticket on the canal or on our other trails. We talked, Fred had examples, I had examples, almost everybody had examples where unfortunately our attempts to be friendly and educate were met with resistance and profanity, frankly. So it's nice to publicize it, but I think a lot of people know the rules already, and I just think that we're gonna probably plan for phase 2. So I think this is great. I think what it does is important. I especially would like to suggest that we do provide the alternative preferred e-bike pathway, or recommended e-bike pathway. Obviously, it's an alternative to the canal. I'm not sure whether or not something like that applies to people who are on the traditional bridle trails, that we could come up with an alternative pathway. I do think that the education piece for the paved trails that are separate from the road is especially important. And for instance, you use the example in our materials of the area right in between Kent, where an e-bike would not be allowed, but that same person goes another 100 yards up the road to Quincy Farm, and it is allowed on that stretch. But once you cross the canal and they're separated again all the way to Holly Street, frankly, all the way to the edge of the village, they no longer again would be allowed. But if they had turned right on Holly Street, they would be allowed as far down as El Camino, but then not for the rest of the way to Bellevue. And I don't think people know that, number one. And, you know, I'm not sure how it is that you're going to come up with an alternative e-bike route to the Highline Canal other than telling e-bikes that they have to be on the street on Quincy and Holly Street. Because I think that's kind of what I'm seeing would be the alternative to the Highline Canal. So I don't know if that made any sense without drawing and kind of just using my words, but I think that an alternative e-bike trail or pathway or route is a good one, but boy, does it come with a whole lot of education so that people know what's permissible.
Yes, I agree.
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I the more education, the more, you know, I even went so far as, you know, it's up against that idea of space, but, you know, maybe you have a sign that says something to the equivalent of, you know, welcome to CHV's portion of the Highline Canal and bridle paths. Enjoy, be courteous to others, you know, ride slowly, be safe, be respectful. You know, something that's friendly, but directive, I guess I would say. You know, it's a question against space and how intrusive they are. You know, I don't want to turn around and, you know, make a maze that you have to go through as you enter Cherry Hills Village that slows you down to the point that you have to read all these signs. But, you know, I do think we heard very strongly that trails in the village are bucolic in nature and that we have a disrespect problem and a speeding problem. So, you know, kind of shaking people by the collars is kind of what I heard a little bit about people wanted to see. I want to do it respectfully. I want to do it friendly, but I do think that the members of the community are looking for results. So those are my comments.
Commissioner Murphy, did you have any comments on the signs or other options?
Well, while she's grabbing that, the only other question I had for you is, do we have on all of our signs, do we have like those Q codes that we can load up information that people can put on their phones?
We do use them for some of the art commission, for the art pieces. They have an app, I think, that works with the QR. Well, I don't know. Actually, Laura, does the QR code go to something in the app, or is it a website?
The only one we have right now is on the sculpture in front of City Hall, I believe, and that directs you directly to the city website where we have a video for that particular sculpture. We do also have an app that locates all the different sculptures throughout the city, but I don't believe that one is connected to a QR code anywhere.
Thank you.
My thought there is, boy, it would sure be nice if you could get you ride through and somehow an electronic, sensor, sends out an alert that says, welcome to Cherry Hills. It does the comments that I made already, but it even goes further than that. It links them to magic spots along our trail spot and recommends that they enjoy. For instance, one of the things that we're looking for is feedback on what animals do you see and when and where. The alerting to more than just a don't as you enter Cherry Hills might be something that might be really good, or it might be able to throw off an alert that says, beware, coyote's nest is, close by, be respectful, or, things that are topical that as we move more and more to electronics, people see things, they pop up on their phone and they take a quick notice. And they're less intrusive than is a sign.
So I don't think that there's any way for us to push a notification out unless someone has like downloaded an app, for example. But I hear what you're saying about make the signs a combination of both messaging about how to be respectful and what proper trail use is, and something that's positive and welcoming at the same time. And we can look into adding a QR code or adding something that links people to more up-to-date messaging from our website. And that way it's not sort of a standalone sign. It's something that's more topical and able to be updated.
Thank you. Sorry, Kate, I didn't mean to jump on you. I don't have Kate on my.
Hello?
Yeah.
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Oh, I just muted it because there's a lot going on in my house. I just don't want to have you guys have to listen to that. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. I just have it muted just so that you don't have to listen to what's going on in the background.
Not a problem. Go ahead. We were just asking about if you had any comments on the trail etiquette rules and speeding signs that Emily had talked about.
I liked what she had to say. I think the verbiage, I think I like saying, this is our village, handle it with, kind of along the lines of handling it with care, love it like we do, kind of along those lines, there's a reason why we all live in the village, and we're opening it up to everyone, and it is, it's going to be a well-used trail, but everybody to respect it and love it and take care of it like we have, and like we do. A sign that you always see when kids are speeding, drive like your kids live here kind of thing. That sign always gets my attention when I'm driving, and I think along those lines that, I think that's, I don't know, but that's along the lines you were all saying, I agree with. And I don't, and regarding the dogs versus pets, I think that I think everyone understands that 99% of the animals that are walked or without a leash are dogs and not pigs or, whatever, goats.
Yes.
But I think along those lines, otherwise I agree with everything that has been said. So.
Thank you, Kate. I really like that. Yeah, the handle with care type messaging. We'll see if we can find some wording that's kind of personal like that.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about though, when you're driving along and it says, drive like your kids live here. That kind of a sign that people, like parents with children have in neighborhoods, it gets your attention. There's signs all over Denver with those, they're red with white lettering, and they get your attention. It always makes you think twice before you're speeding through. Drive like these are your children and this is your neighborhood. Along those lines.
I I agree with what Kate's saying. I assume there's a whole lot of slogans that have kind of come out of the anti-speeding world for roads, think twice, save a life. You just said it, you know, I think that, quick little sayings like that can be placed along, not right on top, so it's not one sign after the next, but, periodically. I like what Kate said is, use the trails like you live here, or use the trails as if you own them. Although some people are less careful with their stuff, but I think it's important for us to make a designation, though, that a lot of our bridle trails that have these problems are not outsiders, but unfortunately they're village residents using them disrespectfully as well. So I do think the Highline Canal is a wider audience, but we can't forget our own friends and family are probably part of our problem in some of the trails.
Yes. So what I'm hearing from the commission is mostly focused on the High Line. So I think from a staff perspective, we'll probably focus on those signs first and getting welcome signs and how to be a courteous trail user, sort of that wrapped into one sign, getting those signs set up first for when you're coming down from Hamden and when you're coming up from Bellevue. And then maybe the next step will be more of those bridle trail signs that we can strategically locate through the village in spots where they're most needed, and make them a little bit brighter so they stand out a little bit more, per Chelsea's suggestion, and start there.
And I would add, I would just add Colorado Boulevard and Quincy at the canal as additional locations, because a lot of people come and they park right there.
Yes. All right, so we will focus on those 4 areas first.
Well, thank you guys for doing that. I greatly appreciate.
Yes.
I think that'll help a lot. And it would be, I guess the only other thing that I would maybe add to this is maybe a bit of outreach to the e-bike community, whether they be stores or, trade associations or whoever it is that we heard from during the discussion last time, and maybe do a little outreach and education to them to have to, some guy goes to that bike store on Colorado Boulevard. When he sells a bike, maybe he can just say, by the way, Cherry Hills Village doesn't allow e-bikes. On the trails. On the trails.
I think that's a tall order for government to reach out to a private business to ask them to let people know what the rules are. So I think if we want to focus on awareness, we want to do that through the channels that we would normally use to reach our residents, rather than through private businesses.
Well, and my only comment would be is I agree with reaching the methods we use to reach our residents, but many of these that we're trying to reach are not necessarily our residents. And so, putting them out in the community, and I was just trying to figure out, who is the affected community on some of these issues, bike stores in general, when they have somebody come in and it's, hi, Rob, I see you have a Cherry Hills Village address. I just want to make sure you understand what the rules are, happy to sell you a bike, use it, enjoy it. By the way, they're not allowed on Cherry Hills Village trails. Don't want you to get in trouble.
Perhaps that's something we could do like privately, like as private residents, rather than, as Emily said, going through governmental means. I like the idea, it makes sense, but I do agree with Emily that it's kind of beyond the reach of what local government should be doing. But I'd be happy to work with you on that independently.
Sure. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I think that's a good plan.
All right. Are you good, Emily, on feedback then?
I am good. Thank you so much for all your thoughts. I
Great.
think we have a plan.
Thank you guys for doing that. Next on our agenda is new business. Again, Emily, you have a presentation for us and a memorandum about alcohol in parks.
I do, and I will say right off the bat, I should have titled this item Alcohol in Parks Related to Permitted Events. So I just want to make it clear before we get started. This discussion is not about permitting alcohol in parks broadly during park hours, you know, all of the time. That's not what this item is talking about. This question is really specific to permitting alcohol in parks as it's related to an event that's happening in that park that the city has issued a permit for. So just to be very clear. So this question has started to come up both at a recent council meeting related to the Allen Hutto Memorial Commons use policy, and it came up a little bit related to the 75th anniversary committee early last year when they were discussing planning an event in John Mead Park. So the existing municipal code language prohibits alcohol in parks and trails without exception. No matter if there's an event or something going on, you cannot have alcoholic beverages in parks or on trails. So all of the discussions and inquiries related to changing this piece of the code have been related to John Mead Park. I've spoken with Frank Hutto, who is one of the donors of Allen Hutto Memorial Commons, and he expressed to staff he would also prefer that alcohol be an option in Allen Hutto Memorial Commons. So the thought or the question really before PTRC is whether to amend the code to allow alcohol for permitted events, and if yes, should it be in all parks or just to the two that, or the one that keeps coming up, which is John Mead and Allen Hutto. I'm going to treat them as one park for the purpose of this discussion. Another question coming from council is, should the city be the only entity permitted to hold events with alcohol, or should events with that are being held by nonprofits be permitted to have alcohol as well? So my suggestion really is to limit this discussion to John Mead Park and Allen Hutto Memorial Commons, mostly because our other parks are just very passive parks. They don't have a lot of parking. They don't have facilities really to be able to support larger events. But I'm interested to hear PTRC's thoughts. And this item is also just seeking feedback. We're going to take your opinions to City Council at their study session on June 1st. And then if City Council provides direction to change the code, I will bring specific municipal code language to PTRC to discuss. So this is sort of an initial feedback. What are your initial thoughts? We'll take those to council, and then this will in all likelihood come back to PTRC. So I'm going to go ahead and just flip to, see if I can do this. Flip to this last page so these three questions are in front of you, and I will open it up for discussion.
And this is Laura. Can I just clarify one thing? We were talking about, if alcohol is allowed for permitted events, it would be, the thought would be it's both private events and more public events. So nonprofits, but also if someone just wanted to have a birthday party in John Mead Park, that they could get an event that would allow alcohol for that type of situation.
Are we able to make a distinguishment on types of alcohol, or does council only want to say beer is the same as bourbon?
I think the thought would be that it would be a general alcohol allowance. There wasn't any talk about just beer. I think that might be the only distinction that would be available actually based on state statute.
Okay, I have a couple clarifying questions. Okay, so again, these are just events like somebody submits a permit, they have an event, it's only for, you mentioned nonprofits, or it can be for anybody. Is it a private event or is it for some kind of either business or nonprofit purpose? Or this is just a general municipality code change?
That's really part of the discussion.
Okay,
So that's one of the questions that
okay.
But am
council
I-
brought us to. Go ahead.
But am
Yeah.
I to understand that right now, if a bunch of friends and I want to go to John Mead or Hutto, not reserve it, we would still be under the old code or the existing code of no alcohol being allowed in any of these parks.
That's correct. And even if you went out, even if we were to change the code to allow alcohol for events, if you were to not reserve anything and just go into the park and have alcohol, that it would still not be permitted. So we're not talking about like, you can go with friends and have a picnic. This is like if you're reserving the park shelter, if you're reserving the amphitheater at John Mead Park or Ellen Hutto.
So
Go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
I was just going to say, so, it drives people to make a reservation if they want to be able to provide alcohol. And my understanding is that I think we said there was a small fee associated. I think we agreed that it was like, I'm trying to remember, wasn't it like $25 or something like that?
For Allen Hutto, well, okay, so there's no fee right now to use Allen Hutto Memorial Commons besides the $25 application fee that anyone pays for any permit application.
Right.
John Mead Park, we are developing, we haven't finalized this with the city manager is the one that signs off on these policies. We are likely going to have a reservation fee for the park shelter for John Mead. That's an actual, like a rental fee rather than that permit application fee. The two would be separate.
Okay.
And I would add, if the event being permitted for alcohol is public, a public event, something that is advertised, you could buy tickets for, then state statute kicks in and a special event liquor permit is required in addition to the city permit. And that has some additional fees as well.
So my initial thought, or the question that I asked initially, was because I guess it's what does the city envision happening in these venues? And the reason I mention that is I think that you'll attract different event types depending on whether you can or can't serve alcohol. I think that will be something that impacts who comes to, the amphitheater or to the park. And so I don't know that necessarily matters. Like it may just be a decision based more on, is this something we want to manage? Is this liability we want to take on? Or these, is this work we want to handle? Or is it if somebody wants to have a pretty high-end fundraiser and they really want to, go in with a bang, I guess you could say, probably having alcohol would be really helpful. Just being able to provide that level of service. But at the same time, there could be other events that are occurring that people want to serve alcohol in that have different motives. So I don't think you can limit it that way. But I think one thing that would be really important is obviously writing some regulations around it, but also the deposit that you take, because the level of damage could potentially be greater as a result of having alcohol there. So that would be one thing I would think about, is just the deposit that goes into it, and then also what kind of events the city's willing. I know there are some noise restrictions, there are some, different codes that are in place that are also ancillary to this issue. And so how will that impact the type of event? And, what kind of events would that encourage?
Yes, so I can give a little bit of context for the items that sort of come up for. The 75th anniversary committee had considered having an event with alcohol in the park as the 75th anniversary celebration. So that I think would have been sort of a more on the sophisticated event side, I guess. And the other discussions that we've had internally are the art commission, if they want to have a music event at Alan Hutto and serve wine, that type of thing. I think that those are the two big ones that have come up from the city standpoint. But you raise a lot of good points about there are other pieces of the code that this, that might come into play with these types of events. So that's something to definitely be aware of.
The amount of maintenance that's required in general to host so many events. I don't know if there's a cap on the number of events that the city's willing to permit. And so if this, let's say you had an event every single weekend, the amount of maintenance that could potentially cause would be substantial. So that might impact to whether or not you want to serve alcohol at these events or not, because depending on, again, the volume, the size, the frequency, if you had like 4 marquee events a year for an anniversary celebration, a fundraiser, maybe other things the city wants to do, I could see it being, in those 4 instances, that those would be, large events, maybe not public due to some state regulations, but that's how I would start to approach it. And then I would think about, again, the level of deposit that you would want to think about because of potential damage. And then also understanding a little bit more clearly the liability that comes with this. So, as mentioned, like if something were to happen, if someone had an accident or something were to go wrong, what liability rests on the city's shoulders, and then that would definitely factor in as well.
I haven't said much about this because I don't have strong feelings about this. I don't love that you can't consume any alcoholic beverage ever for any event. All we'd really have to do, it's a single line, would be add just a few words after that. So it is unlawful to consume any alcoholic beverage within any park or trail within the city without specific city council approval. And then how the city would want to manage that with the permits and the fees doesn't need to be in the code. That could be more of an administrative decision. But, just adding 5 words could easily change it without having to do too much and keep most people happy without going crazy about letting everybody drink everywhere all over the parks for whatever. That's not what anybody wants anyways. So to keep it very narrow would be my recommendation. And I think that's all I have on this.
So Tori, so that I understand, are you in favor of changing the code to allow
I am in
alcohol?
favor of changing the code. I can't even see my screen, but I just added without specific city council approval. And then what the city would want to do with that, as far as administrative processes for allowing it for special events, could just be purely administrative and not have to be in the code or anything like that.
Well, they're going to kick that down to PTRC again and ask us when it is that we think alcohol would be allowable in parks or on trails. So, yeah, I think it eliminates the prohibition by saying there is an avenue to have alcohol, but it doesn't solve the problem of under what conditions do we think alcohol would be okay. So I guess it answered question number 1 is, could you have alcohol? And it sounds to me like you're saying, yeah. But what time, where, how, the things that Chelsea raised, we're still not providing a lot of feedback to council, but that's,
I somewhat like the idea of having city council decide event by event which ones
Just to provide a little bit,
put it on them, because they are the ultimate decision makers.
to provide a little bit of context, we 2 things. So permitting, usually we try and keep at an administrative level, especially because with city council, couple different things. We need to have a process so that it's fair, right? And so that if you meet certain criteria, you know, if your event follows these criteria, we have permitted it, so that it's not a,
Arbitrary.
yeah, it's not an arbitrary decision, or it doesn't create the appearance of an arbitrary decision either, even if it's not arbitrary, on city council's part. So we do need to have specific criteria that we're going to follow one way or another.
Thank you for
So-
that clarification. That
Yeah.
does change my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just to kind of what Commissioner Aber just said, it's a really good point. Like, what is the suggestion? And my thought is, I mean, I love the concept of being able to open the place up and make it robust and fun and have like lots of people enjoy it and utilize it to its fullest, which would likely include alcohol to make it, you know, at its highest and best. But I also think it's a little bit of a slippery slope, because as soon as something goes wrong, as soon as something happens, it just changes the whole game. And so, you know, my suggestion would be, I feel there needs to be a little bit more of a conversation around it before any real recommendations can be made. And that would be, again, like, what are those requirements? You know, Emily, like you mentioned, like, what are the criteria that people have to meet in order to get that permit? And I think that would be important. Like, maybe, obviously, it means everybody need to be over 21. Like, can people bring their older kids, their younger kids? And if that happens, what happens if a minor served? You know, if, you know, what kind of, is there any oversight on, you know, whether people are drinking and driving? I mean, things like that. Those are the things that are going to come up that are going to put this in jeopardy. And then if you do open it up to public events, you know, how does the state regulation play with the city regulation, and how are those two going to work in tandem? And so, you know, I feel like this is just a very nuanced, very detailed, you know, thing that just, I don't know, it just seems like it needs a lot of conversation, and to change the code around it. Again, I mean, theoretically, it sounds great to me. Like, I think if you have an amphitheater, well, you know, you should be able to maybe have a glass of wine or have a drink, you know, here and there. But once you open that up, it's, you know, people are going to use it as they see fit. So it's hard for me to make a recommendation on this one, just black and white, you know, just kind of flat out. Not that most of these are black and white choices, but this one just seems really a little bit more involved. So I don't know.
So we kind of need direction. I don't want to make this circular, but we can't write specific code language without knowing what we're writing code language about.
Yeah, I understand. I do.
So we can't put parameters around, we can't start to put parameters around things until we really know what PTRC and council want. And
See if I can
know
jump
that
in.
It does make it hard to make a recommendation, because you feel like I don't have all of the information that I want. But just remember too that this isn't, you're not making a recommendation tonight.
Okay.
It's okay for PTRC to be like, we kind of are leaning towards yes, or we're really leaning towards no, without, you're not committing tonight, if that helps a little bit.
And Commissioner Aber, I do really want to hear your thoughts. I just, one other thing, so I don't
No.
forget it, is just, so then in that case, I'm leaning toward yes, because I see that as really opening this venue up and letting everybody know that, you know, it's a venue that has a lot of opportunity to have a really great event, that you can serve alcohol, you can serve food, you can make it really, you know, it's a beautiful, wonderful setting. And I think it would allow people to see it as something that can be used in that way. So I'd lean toward yes. But as for some of the details of it, you know, I think that those would be, you know, important to kind of.
I agree with Chelsea. I think that it's such a beautiful venue, and it has such amazing potential. And, you know, maybe it's via a permit, you know, case by case situation, but I hate to exclude it. I think that it's going to limit the functions. And I think it's something that has, I mean, I could see, you know, like kind of like, you know, like Steamboat Springs has, or Vail has Strings on the Mountains, you know, kind of thing, where, you know, where there might be some sort of concert in the park, and where people, you know, I just don't want to see it limited, but I understand that there has to, those be very careful. Ebert and
Oh, Kate, I think you're
play and not driving pool.
Not
Kate?
sure. We had some gaps in there, Kate. I'm not sure if you're in a bad cell area, but I think that we understood that you think that there's a place on some events to have alcohol allowed.
And I agree with her thoughts on that strings on the mountain concept. That's what I'm envisioning too, right? Like a similar venue to something like that that could have some really beautiful, memorable, wonderful events.
A quick question, talking about going circular, is there any signage about liquor at any of these parks?
There, I believe on the signage at John Mead Park, it specifies no alcohol is permitted in the park.
Thank you. Because I could be involved with the sign process as well. Somehow integrate that may not be the worst idea.
Mhm.
Let me, if I can, try and kind of break this into a couple different pieces. Number one, we've kind of got government function government function events, 75th anniversary, movie night, car show. And then we've kind of got private, whether it's my anniversary dinner or a nonprofit that wants to have a fundraiser. Let's start with the government function events, whether it's an art show that wants to have wine. What would you say about having alcohol at movie night? Let's just take these just head on. My comment is movie nights and no.
Laura is going to jump in and help me here, but the state regulations about how liquor is served and everything else are really, I think, are wildly complicated. It's
agree.
really hard. It's really hard to sit here and be like, okay, well, what about movie night? Because there are differences in the state licensing about who is serving it, about whether people are paying for tickets or not, or are paying directly for the alcohol. So,
well, and I'm
I think it's
approaching
gonna be
it
really,
from,
really tricky for us to go through and say movie night, because really that takes you down this one tree of a different state.
Where I'm going with this is, let's assume that we can qualify and meet all of the legal requirements to distribute and sell alcohol or provide alcohol. The question I was trying to get at is, do you look at city events like what I just mentioned as needing, wanting, desiring alcohol as a present item there? My answer is movie night, I don't. It's a family event. Would it be nice if moms and dads maybe, but I just don't think it is conducive to, same thing with the winter holiday event. We're gearing it largely towards young people. There doesn't need to be alcohol at an event like that. A car show, I would say the same thing. It's largely family oriented. Where I guess I'm going is that a 75th anniversary party is not geared towards families. It's probably geared, depends on the event, but an event that is geared towards adults might be better with alcohol being an available option. My comment to council is, we live in a world where there's too much alcohol consumption already, and frankly, our parks and open space, whether it's for a charitable function or not, need not either have alcohol or be limited to beer and wine. I just, I'm not Mr. Puritan, but I do believe that you can have a sophisticated event leaning on wine instead of bourbon, to put an example. So that's just me.
I like that. I like that a lot. Just, I would second the concept of leaning toward yes, with the caveat, maybe just beer and wine. And also, I don't know if there's a way to put that kind of like criteria around what kind of event it is, because I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, not really family events, not so much maybe certain private events that are, again, with people under 21, but yes, for certain types of events. So if that can be one of the restrictions, so the leaning yes with maybe beer and wine generally, and also some kind of a parameter around the event type and the attendees.
We talked when we were looking at the application for Allen Hutto Park a few meetings ago. And I'm very aware of the fact that, we have a permit system that needs to be open, I believe, to all, not favoring residents over non-residents. And I think I said at that time that I am very nervous about our parks becoming destination event spaces. And that they should not be rental venues like the Botanic Gardens treats its Botanic Garden rental space for $10,000 for a wedding. I am nervous that allowing alcohol drives certain kinds of events that we may not necessarily want for our parks. When the Huttos donated the property for Hutto Commons, it was with an idea and honoring their son who loved to perform. And it was geared largely towards children and youth events. And now I'm hearing that, or thinking, not hearing, but thinking that we want to consider whether or not that can have double function, or which function will end up predominant in the use. And I don't want to tip the scale by allowing alcohol, that we end up with cocktail parties for nonprofits, or frankly, not even for nonprofits. It could just be my anniversary party where, I don't want to have that. And I think it also tilts a lot of the use towards night and evenings if you're going to have alcohol permitted. And I think that in general, we have sort of talked about our spaces being quieter as we get later in the evenings. So all these things together lead me to think that my preference is not to allow alcohol, but if we do, I would like it to be beer and wine only. And as far as the question of spaces, I do think that the area, the park around the lake in Buell Mansion is as beautiful as some of our other spaces, as is, I don't know what we're doing with Quincy Farms as an example. Are we allowing alcohol at that? Because I think, again, it drives people to certain places that we may not want to do that if we say these are the only places that you can allow alcohol. At the same time, if you're going to allow it in Mead Park and Hutto Commons, my belief is that it should be allowed everywhere, only because I don't think that you can rationally distinguish why you wanted it some and not at others. I do think that this came up a few years ago when we had all of the, the food trucks and the market day that we had in Mead Park. That, a lot of people talked about really wanting to have, a beer truck or a liquor truck be available to people as part of their experience. It came up then. So, those are the things that, my blush is no or yes, but only with beer and wine. And then even then, only at city events and not nonprofit slash private events.
So mine is beer and wine, leaning toward yes, nonprofit events, private events, city events, but some kind of written language in the code that really specifies certain criteria for the event. Maybe again around age, maybe again around the type, maybe again around the size of the event. Just has some pretty specific parameters that allow the city to accept or deny the application request.
Can the city currently have alcohol inside City Hall or the fire station building?
City Hall, yes. Fire station, no.
The authority for City Hall is what?
The city manager has to approve the event. And we
Is
would
it-
have to get the time that we had it was for an art commission event, so we got a special event liquor permit through the state.
Well, and that's where I'm going is that, yes, our code says no alcohol in the parks. And I think City Hall is considered part of Mead Park. Emily's saying no.
I believe it's zoned differently.
No, we zoned it all O2. When we redid the zoning, I thought we included everything. So I'm not sitting here to have a squabble. I'm sitting here to say, it seems weird that you can have alcohol with city manager permission inside the building, and yet you step across to the swing set and it's a different standard, or to Hutto Commons. That I think we got to come up with some uniformity of approach here. You know, do we have the ability to, yes, code says no alcohol in parks, but you know, is there a variance process that you could allow alcohol in parks?
Not as it currently stands.
So what Commissioner Leviton talked about putting in that magic language in a process, or what Chelsea said about, you know, formalizing some standards, might be that it's through a variance process. But, you know, effectively, if you're going to say it's allowed, you know, lots of people are going to make use of it. So I'll go back to my previous comment.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else?
I still like, this is Kate. I still like the idea of the beer and wine. Definitely not hard alcohol. That's not necessary. But I understand that it gets complicated and the waters get a little murky, and we've obviously got to be very careful with our verbiage and how we lay it out and describe, you know, from a legal standpoint. And I'm, you know, obviously not the right person to weigh in on this part of it. But I do think that for the right type of events, I mean, and then maybe it's not so much, maybe it's more community style events, and rather than personal events that, you know, people lease out the space, that maybe that's not what we're aiming for. But on a community event where we have a lovely little concert in the park, or some sort of, I'm just thinking of some sort of, you know, event where it brings people from the village together. I think that's what this was designed for. And I think a lot of, you know, from a tax paying standpoint, I think people see this park and they see, you know, what's gone into it. And I think people would like to see something positive come out of it. And an event that brings the, you know, the whole intention of it is to bring people, bring people there. That, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to necessarily have alcohol to entice people to show up, but it doesn't hurt. And I mean, I think if we were, it's a responsible, drink responsible type of event where it just is a gathering to bring people together. I think that people would, I would hope, drink responsibly, and it, if we limited it to that kind of it, I don't know if that's possible or not. So that's my 2 cents there.
Kate, do you have an opinion then one way or the other, whether it should be limited to city events or whether like a nonprofit, for example, could hold an event?
That I think that's where it kind of gets a little tricky, because I think we have to be really careful, because like Commissioner Ebert said, I mean, then are people going to start, having rehearsal dinners in the park, or, I mean, I don't know where do we draw the line, but maybe if it's, I don't know, I guess it would, I would lean towards the guidance of our legal counsel and lawyers on the board in terms of how we want to look at that. I mean, I think if we were to say it's community events, where that's where, alcohol, wine and beer are allowed for community events, but private events, to lease it out, I don't know. I'm with you on the fact that could be a slippery slope, and we got to be really careful where that's heading, because I could see people wanting to, I mean, it's such a beautiful setting, and I don't know. That's a tricky one. I don't know. I'm on the fence on that one. I definitely like the idea of it for community events, though, and I guess with the right guidance legally, I just guess we'd have to really cover our bases, and because that could go down a rabbit hole really pretty quickly, and I don't know if that's something we want to entertain. And then on top of it, with like Commissioner Ebert brought up, that not all parks are allowed to have alcohol, so I don't know. Can we isolate it to just this park, or how does that work?
Yes, so we have the option of only allowing events with alcohol in John Mead Park and Allen Hutto Memorial Commons, or allowing them in other parks as well. So our staff recommendation is really just to limit it to John Mead and Allen Hutto, since it has the infrastructure to support that type of event, whereas like Woody Hollow, like there aren't restrooms, there isn't parking. So we wouldn't really want to encourage larger events there either.
Right,
But yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, like a Wash Park, I've been at events at Wash Park where there's alcohol. And granted, Wash Park is a totally different ball game, but and maybe alcohol wasn't allowed, and we were there drinking it. I don't know, but it was a going away party, and there was definitely alcohol. I guess if we can cover our bases, I mean, it would be nice. It would be a nice venue to be able to offer our community, because I think maybe our community style events aren't gonna be, they're gonna be few and far between. I mean, I could see us having a few a year, but maybe the park would get much more use if there, and maybe there is I don't know if this is a possibility or not, but where you lease it, and there's a fee, and if there's kind of like a damage deposit, and and maybe there is a fee that would help cover, when we have to hire extra staff to, empty the garbage cans, more often, or, just the maintenance of the park after an event. That would help cover that cost basis in terms of, so yeah, I guess I'm going to go forward and go all the way and say yes to just for the sake of the use and the enjoyment. And I think that window is going to be pretty narrow. I don't see a lot of people using it beyond October, October to even to the beginning of May. I don't see it that, but I think it would be a lovely thing to be able to offer and they'd have to fill out a permit, and you'd have to, put down a deposit and maybe even a small fee to, a user fee to be, if it's going to be an event where alcohol is going to be, like some sort of questionnaire where they fill it out, and then I don't know. I mean, obviously we're going to need legal guidance on how we word it and how that contract looks, but it would be a very nice thing to be able to offer, and definitely would get, I think we'd see a lot more usage of this beautiful setting and in our village, and it might, bring more people out. So.
One thing I want to add, Kate, I really like all of that a lot, what you just said. And generally speaking, just with anything when it comes to restrictions, putting in more restrictions up front usually is harder to undo down the line versus, as opposed to vice versa. So, if we were to allow this to go forward and everyone was to just put in the thought that it's leaning toward yes, and then something were to go wrong, to me, it's easier to pull back versus never knowing what would have happened if you had allowed it, like what could have come about if it had been allowed. So I don't know, just a thought on, maybe it starts out with kind of a yes with some of the different things that have been mentioned, and then it may change over time, but going the other way, I find usually is more challenging.
I like that. I like that idea.
What do our neighbors do with respect to, Greenwood has parks, but I'm almost thinking a little bit like, what is Denver's mountain park program? Because, do they allow weddings? Do they allow alcohol to take place at those type of things? I'd like to think that we're unique, but the reality is that, Denver cares about its mountain parks the same way we care about our parks. We don't want them trashed. They don't want them trashed. I've talked in the past about sort of being concerned we turn into an event venue destination place. And, in response, I've gotten different levels of nobody's in the parks now. It would be nice to maybe get them used. So Commissioner Murphy, your comment about maybe using it as a ticket to draw people into a park that the city just spent $4 million on, or whatever our price tag is maybe not necessarily a bad thing. Is you say, okay, we allow alcohol, we heavily regulate its conditions and events and, liability insurance if you're going to have a private event, and, really beef up that it's easier to relax those if they're unnecessary than to put them in place. I'm a little bit on the flip side with you on that, Chelsea, that it's easier to become more lenient than to become more strict. But I can see that argument that says any event will help put people in our parks, and maybe they become lovers of our park regardless of whether there's alcohol, and they return and enjoy. That's the reason why you would open it to everybody. But I still kind of come down on my side of saying it's city events or city, because it's probably pretty easy that you could hook into some side of a city event need that will end up having enough events.
So Commissioner Eber, I just want to respond to your question. I just looked up the rules for Denver, and I don't want to, I'm just going to cite this directly so you just know the reference. The Denver Post published an article in April of 2020, April 24th, that said Denver Parks and Rec is temporarily prohibiting the possession and consumption of alcohol, including beer, wine, and champagne, which, by the way, on the side, I'd like to add champagne to that list because that's a good point. According to the press release, in city parks beginning Friday, running through July 23rd of 2020, the purpose was a temporary directive to encourage staying at home and social distancing. So that implies that they were.
That was COVID.
It was COVID, but I think the underlying message there is that it implies that you could have alcohol at the parks independent, before that. So I don't know what it looks like, but just to answer your question, or just to cite that one article from the Denver Post, that they did, mention that for the Denver Parks and Rec as a whole, so for the city of Denver.
And I also would think too that if you look at the people that would be leasing or leasing the space or reserving the space, 99.9% of the people are responsible. I really believe that. I think that, it's going to be the same people that read the Villager or read the Cherry Hills, any type of flyer magazine, that are informed and love the village and look forward to, like, the same people that show up at our Winterfest or movie night, or, people that are well informed and want to be a part of that. The reason why they're here is because they love the village and they're excited about this park. And, I could see it being, a place where, maybe 5th grade graduation from Cherry Hills Village Elementary, there might be some sort of function there, or, something with West Middle School. I mean, I just see it being in a venue where people are really gonna, we flock to if we do this right, and people are gonna really enjoy like Mr. Ebert said, that $4 million park, and I think that we need to, it's kind of like, if you build it, they'll come. And if we do this right, I think people are going to really enjoy what there's been so much planning that's gone into this. And I look at everything that Emily, from the logs and the equipment and the playground. I mean, there's so much potential there. And I think that we need to make it even more so. So I'm going to say beer, wine, and Prosecco champagne.
Yeah. Funny.
All right. Well, after listening to many of your comments and considering them, what about like 15% alcohol cutoff, which you can, it's just limiting to wine and beer by definition. It's a giant waste of time. But the 15% cutoff is really common. In Europe, for example, you can buy alcohol that's 15% or less at younger ages in many countries. And it is, I think I can agree with you all that hard liquor doesn't really belong in our parks for I can't think of any good reason. But, drinking has been part of human civilization and culture for as long as they've figured out how to make it. So to never have it in any city event or any private event, I think is quite, I don't know if prudish is an appropriate word. Sorry if it isn't. I don't know, but I like what Kate said. It's like part of celebrations, and to deny any avenue of ever having an event with any alcohol, I think is imprudent. I also would like to limit it to John Mead and Alan Hutto Memorial Commons. For everybody's sake, it's just more simple. And then I think that's all.
And also, real fast, just to throw this out there so we have it in writing, but, what's the Colorado law, what's it going to be with, vaping and marijuana? I mean, I hope to God we can limit and not have that, but I mean, is that, what, do we need to cover that in our language, or that absolutely no, it's a family style event? I mean, there's nothing worse than, getting in the gondola going to Vail and somebody lighting up a joint. I mean, I hate it. And, but it's open spaces and people do it, so I mean, where do we stand there? Is
Kate, that's already prohibited under a separate section of our code.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're all set.
But if you're
That makes me
bumping
feel
one
better.
part of a code, I do think Commissioner Murphy's question is, if you're bumping one, is somebody going to ask you to bump them both? And say, why not pot in parks too? I'm not opining on the value. I'm just saying that
But we have had no requests from anyone in the public, and we've had no direction from council on that. So I don't,
Okay.
I'm
Thank
not as
God.
worried about that one coming up.
We'll
Well-
cross that bridge down the road, I guess.
And I guess the comment real quick that I'll mention is that while we hope that 99.9% of our parks are respectfully used, we cannot ignore the fact that a whole lot of people drive to parking lots on Colorado Boulevard, Quincy, and other places in the village to access our trails. And they don't see and perhaps don't share the same level of love for our parks that we do. And similarly, sadly, there may be some element within the village that doesn't share a love and care for the parks as well either. So I think the message that I am hearing is, if you're going to allow it, it come with heavy stringency as to making sure that it is neat, clean, and doesn't result in drunken fests. Whatever line that means to everybody, the message is, if it's going to be allowed, it's respectful, social use. I don't see people going to an art party to get smashed, but it may happen, I guess. I don't see people going to a 75th anniversary party and not being able to drive home. Anyway.
And maybe we do the deposit thing, where you reserve and there's a deposit and you get it back if everything is in order. That would kind of encourage people to clean up after themselves, and not leave a bunch of and maybe we need to have it where it's no glass at all. And when we're saying beer and that we don't, I guess the wine is in a wine bottle, but we just don't, I don't want to, you don't want broken glass around or things like that. So we got to think about how that looks. But from a standpoint of a deposit, people are going to think twice before they leave a mess. They want their deposit back.
Well, and I'll go, when you talk about glass, it really stinks to try and clean glass out of grass. And maybe you say your alcohol is only on hard surfaces because it's easier to clean.
So
we're going in the weeds a little bit with this, but we really don't want this to become any kind of an imposition on the city, its residents, or its staff in terms of being able to keep it so that everybody can use it. So.
And you can do, this would be if you just say no glass, it could be cans of beer, there are cans of wine, and you can get boxes of wine, and we could just, eliminate the potential for broken bottles and glass, and it's not uncommon to go to a park event with a box of wine or cans of, versus a bottle of wine. You just don't want to see any broken glass, and then that's where kids are playing, and down the road with opening that can of worms up. So
no, Kate, thank you. That's an excellent point. Laura, I should have put that in the memo. Laura and I had talked about that sort of offline, and agreed that we also didn't want to touch the glass, trying to pick glass out of parts of the park issue. So we had talked about prohibiting that as well.
And just to
and there's
boxes of wine, though. I hadn't gone as far. I was just thinking about the glasses, but the actual wine bottle, that's a really good thought as well.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And boxes of wine are pretty good.
Red Rocks doesn't allow glass, and they seem to function with alcohol totally fine. Never trash their plastic and aluminum only, or cardboard.
Yeah.
Right.
I would add to our list that beer, wine, we talked about Prosecco, champagne, but I think there's another one that we probably find acceptable, and that is, what are these spritzers or whatever?
Hard seltzer.
Seltzers.
Yes. White Claws.
So,
you can tell I
anyways,
have college age daughters.
They have
White
hard,
Claws and
hard
Trulies and
tea.
yeah. But that's a good. I mean, those are pretty much mineral. You know, the alcohol content would probably fall under the Toby's recommendation on that. You know, in terms of percentage. You know, and they are can, and they're, you know, majority like a seltzer water with a little bit of, but then there is a little bit of a hard alcohol in that. So I don't know if you want to do that or not.
Remember, I did recommend, just without naming kinds of alcohol, perhaps recommending just capping it at a 15%, because no real wine is higher than that. Then you're getting into port and sherry, and that's
Yeah.
too hard. So I like just a percentage, because no
Yeah,
alcoholic
that's a good
beverages
point.
over 15% are allowed at any events or something like that. Perhaps we could work with
Okay.
that.
That sounds good.
Glad to hear. I also want to
Emily,
throw in
Laura, does
one
that,
thing, and that is that I think it's really important. I don't know if sorry, I'm like trying to call you Ms. Black and Ms. Gillespie, what your actual titles are. If you've addressed about the requirement to have law enforcement present as well for liability purposes. Like Kate said, maybe 1 out of 1,000 is there for the wrong reasons or is going to do something terrible. And we need a law enforcement there to make sure nobody gets hurt.
We have not addressed this. That would be a requirement of a sort of outside of an alcohol permit. And that is something we would have to discuss with the police department in terms of staffing that. So I
Tori,
mean,
do you
keep
mean
in mind that one of the good things about, if we're only, I'm only hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm only hearing interest in permitting this in John Mead Park and Alan Hutto, not any other parks. The benefit of that is they're across the street.
Right. That's perfect.
Yeah, so they're
Priceless.
they're right there.
just so I also understand though, I do want to know what is Quincy Farms, because I treat that as the same open space. I know we've had differences of of discussion that it is not considered a park, but the reality is I don't want to turn around and drive more functions to that place as well, because they allow liquor when we don't allow it somewhere else.
Right now, there is nothing specifically prohibiting alcohol at Quincy Farm. But we have never had we've never had a request for an event to be held there with alcohol, and B, we don't even tend to get requests for events in the evenings there because it does not have the facilities for anything but a nature event really right now. So,
Okay.
but there's nothing in the code specifically prohibiting it, but we don't, we have not had any interest in that type of event.
Well, but the code does say nothing, no liquor in parks. And,
That's correct, but Quincy Farm isn't defined as a park.
okay,
In the code, I mean, any other discussions aside, it does not count as a park in the code.
okay. Well, hopefully, it was a robust discussion. Hopefully we gave you plenty to take back to city council.
Yeah,
Not bad for a first blush. We reserve the right to do it all over and completely change our minds,
yes,
but that was a very thoughtful and good discussion. So I appreciate everybody doing that. Thank you. Anything else that Emily, you or Laura want to add? Otherwise, we'll go into reports.
no, just to quickly summarize, so I'm hearing we're leaning yes, just as an initial thought. Just John Mead and Alan Hutto, and that PTRC is interested in groups, not just the city, being permitted to hold events with alcohol with the appropriate sort of guardrails in place to make sure that events, don't get out of hand, that we can recoup our costs for damages if something were to happen, and really making sure that the events are held responsibly and doing what we can to set parameters so that that happens. If I missed anything, let me know. And beer, wine, champagne, possible hard seltzer. Laura and I will work on how that recommendation would actually look in the code.
My only comment and add to that is that I don't think I see that allowance to apply to movie night, car show, things that we already have on our calendar right now don't fit the bill to me to be, and I don't know, I think I would think I've seen other members of the commission say that, but we don't see those as alcohol events. We see it limited more to private functions, fundraisers, and city festivity, sophisticated events, not family events.
Yes, and we haven't had discussions internally about, and now we'll have alcohol at the car show or something like that. So the plan really isn't to change the existing events that we have now involving alcohol in any way. It would be something new, like if the Art Commission wanted to have an event, or if 75th wants to have an event, that it would be sort of newer, separate events that we haven't hosted in the past.
Okay. Reports. I talked a little bit with Stephanie. She did not have anything for chair report. Let's go ahead, Commissioner Scott, anything on your end?
Oh,
Commissioner Leviton,
Nope.
Commissioner Murphy.
Yeah, I have something I wanted to bring up. I don't know if this is the time or place. Has anybody heard that there's going to be a tent city homeless, I'm going to call it a tent city, going up on the corner, the northeast corner of Hampton and Colorado Boulevard?
So let me give a little background on this. The church at the, I think it's First Universalist Church that's across Hampton, has applied to the city of Denver. There's a specific process they go through to allow parking for people who are living in their vehicles at their site. So it would be 24-hour parking with somebody basically staffing the location at the church and providing basically like water and sanitation services. I'm not sure whether that's access to like the church bathrooms or they'll have separate bathrooms or something like that, but that they're applying through Denver's process to do that. So if PTRC is interested, I have some information on that I can send over to all of you if that's of interest, but it's not within Cherry Hills Village, so it's not.
No, but it's darn close.
No, so I'm saying it's not a process that we're really involved in. It's
Okay.
County of Denver.
Well,
But
that
I do
could-
have some background that I can email out if that's something that's of interest to the commission.
to the
Yes.
point I think Commissioner Murphy is making is if there are potential impacts to health and safety within the village, whether it's, people on trails or people using city streets or whatever, so note them as part of the concern of the adjacent neighbors, the same way anything else would be. Just because you cross a city line, I don't think automatically means that you don't have a voice.
And what scares me is the fact that, that's right near our brand new underpass for the Highline Canal. And if they're going to be hanging there in their car or, what I've heard, I think there's a potential petition or for these tents. And which is just so concerning and disturbing all in one. But I just think if it's again along the lines, if we build it, they're going to come. And if you're going to provide a place where they can park and sleep in their cars and use the church bath, I mean, what's going to stop them from, flocking there and then wandering, down to the underpass and sleeping in, I just think it's scary.
Noted. Anything else, Commissioner Murphy?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
You got your fingers ready to start writing a lot of articles on etiquette?
Sure.
I think all of us have our fingers at the ready.
Yep.
It's I think Tori's got the most creative ideas, and we're all going to make our PR commission efforts to have health and safety on our trails.
I think that's a good start.
Yeah. I have just a few things that I got to everybody. I gave you Tori nothing, Commissioner Scott nothing, Kate just weighed in. A couple of things on my end. As City Hall is reopening, I would hope that not far behind will be the rekindling of the master plan process, which has a significant impact, and we have a big piece and component on it. So I want to make sure that everybody is aware of master plan. I want to make sure that everybody is poised to be an active participant in all the ways that we can do that. And I think that we are somewhat, I will personally say that the village appears to be kind of at a crossroads of, what was a historic, very high importance of open space and preservation of open space and semi-rural, to now that seems to be, I won't say wavering, but I think it's deserving of everybody's attention. So I want to make sure people know about that. Part and parcel of that master plan process, I think there are a lot of environmental issues that touch parks and trails, but it affects overall quality of life within the village. Anything from hard environmental questions to the fact that the Land Preserve is going to great efforts to promote their bee events and different activities involving sort of environmental consciousness. And I think that goes hand in glove with trying to get a real handle on where our citizens are with respect to open space, trails, environmental issues. And if we have people who care deeply about those things, then the master plan needs to reflect those things. Even to the extent of government operations, climate change, and even the building codes, about whether or not those things need to be wrapped in. I think kind of as Parks, Trails, and Rec Commission is the closest to the environmental branches within the city government. And so I encourage all of us to seek our fellow citizens' input on these things and fold them into provisions within the master plan that are durable for the next number of years until the next master plan. I would follow up our discussion from the last meeting involving the trail issue in Cantito with additional discussions that I had with many neighbors to the east of Holly Street, that it is recognized that that entire part of the village does not have any, and this even includes, I think, Southmore Vista to the extent that it's a little bit further north, but there are no formal trails within anything east of Holly Street, with the exception of about a 100-yard trail that goes from Charlevoix, Chaumont into the old traditional Charlevoix area. That is just, it's literally a link from one neighborhood to the next that has been formally designated as a trail. Other than that, it is either non-existent or on-street trails. And it seems like there is a need for us to do something formal with respect to trails in this part of the village. I would echo the same type of comments to the area west of University, that there are some on-street trails, but very few formalized trails north of Quincy and west of Franklin, I think I would sort of say. So I challenge all of our fellow commissioners here to start thinking how we can more formally adopt linkages. I'm just thinking the Rady Barn has a trail that is formalized through there, but north of the country club, Old Franklin, that whole area right along the north edge doesn't have a trail. There are places that our work is not done, is my point. And I encourage all of us to try and expand on linkages, expand on trails. We get such high marks from our village residents about the importance of trails and open space that it seems like we should be spending time in those areas that don't have those right now. Lastly, again, following the fact that we addressed the Cantito property last meeting, is that the most recent P&Z meeting was canceled or did not take place. And so this issue will likely be on their agenda at their next, I guess it would be a June meeting, I believe. And so, yes, we made positions, but I don't think it would be at all incorrect for all of us to attend and follow and make sure that the importance of this issue is not lost on P&Z. And then frankly, later on, when there's formal city council public hearings, that all of us should be involved. And all of us talked about how important it was to have this be a fully transparent and well-publicized issue, regardless of what side of the fence people come down on. And I do think that that's right in our wheelhouse, that we make sure that everybody knows about it, regardless of side again. So that's my report, but I appreciate it. City staff, I wouldn't be right to turn this over to you guys without again saying thank you for all your hard work. I know that you guys are ready to start going back full-time into the office, or more time into the office. We thank you for all the hard work that you've done working from home. I don't know if Jeff is still on the line, but special thanks to him as we've been going into the spring season. Getting all of the parks have been mowed, trails have been kept up, and so it's a whole new level of activity that is going on in the area, specifically benefiting parks and trails. And we want to say thank you for all of your hard work. With that said, Emily, anything on your reports? Yep, you're muted.
Sorry. Picking up, Rob, on what you were saying, the Cantito vacation application is going to go before Planning and Zoning on Tuesday, June 8th. That'll be an in-person meeting at City Hall at 6:30 p.m. So if you're interested in attending, those packets will go out the first week of June. So you can find that on the website. City Hall is reopening next Monday for the first time, which is exciting. And I want to pose the question to PTRC, because after this meeting, we'll have the option to go back in person. So what are your thoughts on having an in-person meeting in June? That would be June 10th for that meeting.
Yes, 100% for me.
Okay. Anybody else?
I am fine with an in-person meeting. I am one of these people living an incredibly restrictive life because my wife works in nursing homes, so I may still wear a mask, but that is not a political statement. It's a realistic impact that I can't take any chances in moving something to my wife.
Yes, so my understanding, and obviously this could change until then, but government buildings, I believe, are one of the places where we will continue wearing masks going forward. So my expectation right now is that we would be masked in the meeting if we're in person.
Thank you.
Provide that context.
I actually think it's just simply more comfortable in my home desk than it is at City Hall in that same chair with a mask on for 3 hours. That meeting we had was in July, just hot, and I kind of like the virtual. Can get my coffee. I don't know. So if everybody feels it'd be beneficial for me to be there, I will. If I can stay virtual just 1 month at a time, I would actually prefer that.
Okay. And Kate, you're the last one, I think.
If we have to wear masks for 3 hours or 2 hours, I'd rather be home and do it. Yeah. I mean, I think when eventually when we can all go in the comforts of back to how it was, and then I'm in favor of being in person, but for the time being, I'm fine doing it this way. So.
Okay, and I will try and find out more information about the masking question and let you know about that too. But I think then for now, we'll probably plan to have the June 10th meeting virtually, it sounds like.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, with Commissioner Abert's concerns and everyone else's points on the mask, I couldn't agree more. For me, it's more just I have a lot of distractions in the background here, so it just makes it a little easier for me to focus. But I'm happy either way, and with some of those points, I mean, it's fine. It's
okay.
I would be fine with that. Yeah.
Thank you all for weighing in. I appreciate it. And just for your context, other commissions are also having the same conversation, and some are coming to one conclusion and some are coming to another. So it's all about everybody's comfort level and what makes sense commission by commission. So we'll probably be in a mix for the next couple months. So just if you're going to attend a meeting, just check the website to see which way it will be held.
Good.
My other reports are we have special events coming up for the first time in ages. So just as a heads up, Kate had mentioned Cherry Hills Village Elementary School. They are going to have their 5th grade continuation at Allen Hutto Memorial Commons on May 27th. So that'll be our first big event. What was that?
I said, yay.
Yay. I know, so that'll be the first thing that we're really hosting
Oh my gosh.
in that space. So it will be really good.
That's so awesome.
The
Great.
Camden Underpass celebration, as I said before, will be on June 3rd at 4 p.m. So I will send more information as I get it, but if you want to mark the date for that. And then we are planning to have our John Mead Park and Allen Hutto Memorial Commons grand opening celebration that was postponed from last year on June 26th from 9 to noon. We're still working out exactly what that looks like, but we're hoping to have some performers or magician or something for kids on the Allen Hutto side, and then a self-directed scavenger hunt for kids on the John Mead Park side. So if you have any feedback or ideas or things you would like to see for that, feel free to send either Pamela or I an email. And that's all I have. Thank you all for a really great discussion on alcohol in parks. I feel like Laura and I have a great amount of information to give council, so that's always super helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for participating. A great meeting. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Again.
And hearing no objections, we are adjourned at 7:46. I bang my gavel. my imaginary gavel.
Thank you for taking,
Well,
Yeah.
and thank you for taking the lead. I'm glad it wasn't me.
Not a problem. Hope I didn't keep us too long. So I appreciate everybody's thoughts and
No,
input. I thought it was really good.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
no.
everyone.